Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. To him, his ideal came first, next his people, and last himself. Lies in his ability to raise the meanest creature to become as great as himself. His Satchidananda nature. His divinity was translated into everyday living, the ideal in daily practical reality. Noble Sri Ramachandra. True understanding is sure dawn if we follow the principles of Dharma of Shree Rama. The Dharma of Shree Rama. Tejomayananda ji. The famous Ramayana, immortalized by sage Valmiki, though found in many Puranas, is not a Purana but an Itihasa. It appears in the Puranas because one of the subjects dealt with in the Puranas is Vamshanucharita, or the history of the Vamshas, the solar and lunar dynasties. Sri Ram was a descendant of the solar dynasty, and the story of his life contributes to the history of the solar dynasty. Is Ghatana Pradhana, a report of factual happenings in another period of time. The Puranas, on the other hand, sometimes under the cloak of historical events, convey a teaching. They instruct and guide mankind by pointing out the ideal and show the path to its accomplishment. The Ramavatar, however, was essentially intended for Martya Shikshanartham, that is, it was meant to educate all mortals. His life and the incidents in it thus became a personification for education. Since this fulfills the purposes of the Puranas, though an Itihasa, it is also considered a Purana. Adarsha Purush. Sri Ram was called Adarsha Purush and Maryada Purushottam. Adarsha Purush literally means the ideal person. Was he considered the ideal person because he had many ideals? In that case, any idealistic person could be called an Adarsha Purush. Here, Adarsha Purush refers to have a heroic heart that has stood stout through the trials, tribulations, struggles, and tests encountered on the path of perfection. With a resolute heart, filled with faith and courage, he overcomes them. He is then united, as it were, with the perfection that verily translates the ideal into a concrete reality. No longer separate from the ideal, he becomes the ideal itself. He then represents and preaches that ideal by his very existence. Sri Ram was such an Adarsha Purush. Maryada Purush. The term Maryada Purushottam literally means the best among men, following a standard of righteous living. Does this mean that Sri Rama mechanically followed the Dharma Maryada? He did not merely follow Dharma, but in fact established the Dharma Maryada. He set standards of Dharma Maryada by an exemplary life, which was the very embodiment of righteousness. To appreciate his greatness, we have to study the Ramayana in its entirety. Essence of religion. There are a few striking examples that are self explanatory. For instance, Sri Rama, being the eldest son and a prince of the solar dynasty, was the heir apparent. Raja Dasharatha, Sri Ram's father, was an idealistic man who wanted Ramarajya to prevail. He thought that by placing Rama on the throne, Ramarajya would naturally prevail. Thus, he decided to crown the young prince and make him the regent. At this point, Kaikeyi, Ram's stepmother, raised an objection. She dramatically opposed the proposition, suggesting that Rama be exiled for a period of 14 years and her son Bharata be placed on the throne. Rama also supported Ramarajya, but not merely by placing himself on the throne of Ayodhya. He wanted to be seated in the hearts of the citizens of Ayodhya, occupying the everlasting throne of love within. He also wanted to be accepted unanimously without sounding any discordant note of protest or dissatisfaction. Only then would he consider himself fit to wear the crown of sovereignty. This indeed is nobility. Others may have endeavored to gain the kingdom by force. Some may even have gone to the extent of assassinating the old king. Sri Ram strictly followed the dictates of Dharma. He humbly stepped aside and upheld the ideals of true religion. This was the uniqueness of his Maryada. To him, his ideal came first, next his people, and last himself. This is the essence of religion. Love God and serve thy fellow men. Only through love did he seek to rule over the hearts of all. Not wanting a perishable throne and empire, he desired the everlasting kingdom of God, enshrined Dharma, runs through the entire Ramayana. By asking for Ram's exile and Bharat's coronation, Kaikeyi went against Dharma. No one else was in favor of this. She and her wicked maid Manthara were in minority. Raja Dasharath, the citizens of Ayodhya, and Bharat himself were all against this irrationality. So Sri Ram undoubtedly had the majority on his side. He could have easily thrust Kaikeyi aside and occupied the throne to the happiness of one and all. But Sri Ram was not short sighted like our present day politicians seeking immediate gains. He was an epitome of wisdom and sane judgment, knowing well the transience and ephemeral nature of all earthly achievements. He focused his entire life on Dharma. He viewed all his actions from this one enduring factor, the eternal principle amidst the flux All his decisions were based on this standpoint and not for immediate gains. Being the veritable avatar of Dharma, he could not stoop to ascend the throne by adharmic means. Deaf to the protests of his stepmother, had he allowed himself that at some later date the citizens of Ayodhya would have pointed an accusing finger at Raja Dasharath. He would have gone down in history as one who was unable to fulfill his wife's request and one who fell short of his promise. This would amount to an expression of mistrust and disbelief in the king or his successor's ability to fulfill the needs of the subjects. This blemish would have tarnished history of the glorious solar dynasty. Besides, they may have also labeled Sri Ram as one avidly desiring the throne and thirsty for power and suzerainty. Mahadharma Maryada. Sri Ram herein affirms that a word once given will never stand compromised or a promise go unfulfilled. The throne of truth and righteousness was the only throne that he sought. This is Dharma Maryada. This amounts to the extension of our Satchidananda Swarup into the grosser realms of relative existence, the very basis of the philosophy of life. Again, we observe that Sri Rama was not to be seated on the throne above the common man, issuing orders, ruling, and advising his subjects like a Führer. 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 On the contrary, he mingled and became one with his subjects. Although hailing from the noble, blue-blooded Aryan race and the Suryavamsha, his simple nature brought him down to the level of the common man. He lived life lovingly and humbly, shoulder to shoulder with them. We find several examples of this during his 14 years in exile, when he donned bare bark as a garment, exposing his gentle skin to the fierce weather, living on roots and fruits, and subjecting himself to privations. Here he befriended the Vanavasis, tribals, boatmen, rishis, ascetics, and even the birds and beasts. He lived with them, lent a sympathetic ear to their difficulties, and alleviated their sufferings at every turn. The entire forest became his family, and he undoubtedly won their love, reverence, and confidence. This is Dharma Maryada. To establish Dharma, one must be willing to sacrifice one's significant petty stature to rise and unite with the totality by seeing oneness, Sarvatma Bhav, or the one Atma Tattva in all existence. We find Sri Ram apparently distraught, pining for his is really not so. He was by no means a carnal, passionate human, tortured by gross attachments. Connected with all beings, he suffered deeply and felt everybody's pain. At various points during his search for Sita, he seems to forget her entirely. He sees a bleeding and fallen Jatayu and is moved to tears by his noble sacrifice and service. Shabari's faith and devotion touched him greatly, and he was filled with love and joy. Similarly, when he heard of Sita's miserable plight, he felt her pain deeply. He met the love and affection of people by spreading the fragrance of his love. When he saw sacrifice and suffering, he was reduced to tears, which arose from his deep compassion and love for all beings. Once he discovered a heap of bones lying in the forest, which belonged to rishis and ascetics who had been mercilessly slain by the Rakshasas. In this instance, though he had to kill or slay the Adharmika, his aggressive annihilation of the Asuras was only to protect the innocent, the good, and to uphold Dharma. However, even when were directly transported to Vishnupada, his divine abode, they gained the Paramadhama of the Lord. So, in fact, he gave true life through whatever he did or wherever he went. We also find that in different situations he gave counsel and imparted knowledge. For example, when he visited Shabari, overcome by her faith and devotion, he instructed her on Navadha Bhakti. He instructed Lakshmi, Vivek, Maya, and at times even Rajaniti to Tara, who was weeping over the death of Bali. He imparted self knowledge, which removed her ignorance and filled her with Ananda. He was filled with love for all beings and gave himself in every way, at every level. After finally killing Ravan, he instructed Vibhishan to perform the final rites, considering Ravan as a brother. In every situation, Sri Ram revealed his Sachidananda nature. His divinity was translated into everyday living, the ideal in daily practical reality. He thus distinguished himself as the Adarsha Purush, the Maryada Purushottam, the great and noble Sri Ramachandra. His greatness lay in his ability in raising the meanest creature to become as great as himself. He achieved this by neither trampling over nor intimidating others, nor by sitting in lordship over them, as Ravana did. He believed in searching for the lurking potential in each one so that it could manifest or bloom in full splendor. He did this with Hanuman, who until then had been humbly inconspicuous, and also with Vibhishan and Bharata. The world would have these great devotees had it not been for Sri Ram, bringing them into perceiving this one great essence pervading the entire universe is greatness indeed. To live thereafter, glorifying, worshipping, and extolling this divinity through all actions, however humble and insignificant, and offering it all as worship at the altar of the universal spirit is the dharma preached by Sri Ram. This was the principle upon which he based his glorious life. While commencing on a sincere study of the Ramayana, if the eternal values learned from the Puranas are kept in mind, true understanding is bound to dawn.